Hello and welcome back to our discussion of Christian theology. Today we want to look at the problem of evil and its corresponding answer, theodicy. Now I know what you're thinking. You're going to say yes, evil is a problem. And I'm going to have to completely agree with that. Evil certainly is a problem. It's not only one problem, it's a lot of problems. There are multiple problems of evil out there. But the main one that Christians usually face, at least in terms of how we're confronted with it, is what we call the philosophical problem of evil. And it's stated as a basic logical construction. God is all-powerful. He is omnipotent. God is all good. God is omnibenevolent. Now, that's a good word you can use with your own churches. Omnibenevolent. That will raise some eyebrows. So if God is all powerful, that is strong enough to stop evil, and God is all good, He doesn't want evil to exist in the first place, then why evil? That's the philosophical problem of evil. It's an attempt to either disprove God's existence, or if his existence is assumed, to disprove either his power or his character. And it's more popularly expressed in the pastoral question: why do bad things happen? We often state it, why do bad things happen to good people? But really what we mean is, why do bad things happen? Why do bad things happen to me? That or to somebody I love. That is the philosophical problem. God is great. God is good. So where does evil come from? And that is the philosophical problem in a nutshell. But there are other problems of evil. There's the problem of moral evil, which is human beings committing evil committed by human beings by making wrong moral choices. There's natural evil, evil occurring in nature that is not directly connected to any human being's fault. Things like tornadoes and floods and hurricanes and earthquakes and car crashes and just random acts of evil. And then there's societal evil, an evil that is systemic in society, that is moral in nature but larger than any person or group of people. Apartheid, slavery, racism, sexism, all of those things are societal evils. So there are many questions and many problems of evil. We may be able to isolate moral evil maybe as the easiest, because it is the bad choices made by human beings. But how to explain natural evil? How to explain systemic or societal evil? How to explain philosophical evil? These are difficult questions for the Christian. And they're the questions that are constantly being flung into our faces by those who would have an issue with God or with the faith. These are usually born out of pain and born out of suffering and born out of anger and hurt. But be that as it may, we need to be able to at least try to give an answer to some of these things. Now let me preface that by saying sometimes an answer is not appropriate. Sometimes our best thing we can do in the face of this is to show someone love. If someone is hurting, be there for them. We don't have to work out all of theology's questions, and we don't have to try to give answers for everything in life. The people that we love who are hurting would much rather feel our love than hear our wisdom, because our wisdom really isn't worth a whole lot. I would much rather be loved than have my problem explained. So that's rule number one. On a personal pastoral level, love someone who is hurting. Be there for them. Cry with them. I heard a story I read on a blog recently about this preacher in, I think it was Scotland or Ireland. I think it was Scotland. A woman who was a faithful church member, who was elderly, had just lost her husband of many years due to a long illness. And the funeral was on a Wednesday. And they did the funeral, they buried him, and then he came by that afternoon to check on her, the preacher did. And he asked her, "How are you doing?" And she said, "I'm not doing well." She said, "I'm not going to make it to the meeting tonight." She said, "I just can't do it. I'm in too much agony." She said, "So I'm just going to sit here and drink my scotch till I'm drunk to numb the pain." And the preacher pulled up a chair and he says, "You're not going to do it alone." And they got drunk together and they had to cancel the service. Now, I'm not advocating something like that, but that's the kind of embodiment of the sufferings of our loved ones we are called to do. You know, the preacher didn't offer her any great words of wisdom. He just sat there and participated in her sadness and her pain and helped her numb it. And that's our pastoral answer to the problem of evil. I'm not suggesting you do that, but I'm saying that we are called to do likewise. We are called to come alongside those that we love who are hurting and bear their pain with them. To bear one another's burdens and bear one another's sorrows and not feel pressured to be able to explain why they are burdened and why they are sorrowful, because A, we don't know all the facts, and B, we would run the risk of being pretentious, as Job's friends did. You remember Job's friends. They reasoned that because Job was suffering, he must deserve it somehow. He must have done something that angered God or made God no longer love him, because God's lack of love was evident in that he was suffering. So pastorally, we need to remember to bear one another's burdens and not always feel compelled to give an answer or to give an explanation. Problems of evil are to be found within the Bible. There are the Old Testament texts of terror, where God commands Israel to kill the Canaanites. How do you explain that, you might ask me? And I would say, I just don't know. I don't know. That does not perfectly square with the God revealed in Jesus. I don't know. I plead ignorance. I really don't know. I believe it's there. I believe God ordained the words to be there. But how to deal with it, I really don't know. Imprecatory Psalms. The Psalms, especially like Psalm 69 and 109, where the psalmist is cursing his enemies and praying the curse of God down upon his enemies. How do we deal with those? Well, I don't know. Should we pray them? No. We should pray for our enemies. But we need to know that we need to be able to understand the agony felt by the psalmist in those. Direct statements concerning God and evil are easier, especially statements like Isaiah 45:7, where I create evil. I believe that is figurative language. Likewise, Amos 3:6. Those are easier to deal with. But the texts of terror and the imprecatory Psalms, those are pretty serious. And they don't make our problem of they don't make our problem of evil any easier. So you get Israel when you put evil and easier together. You get Israel. I don't get that. Let's move on before I dig myself into a deeper tongue twister hole. Theodicy is the answer to the problem of evil. And first of all, before we give a full-blown theodicy, which theodicy comes from two words, theos and dike, the justification of God. In other words, justifying God in the face of such evil. Before we start talking about those at length, let's look at some general thoughts about evil and theodicy. Do we live in an evil world? Yes. Could it be worse? Yes. I think we can all agree on that. It's bad, but it's not as bad as it could be. And there's no reason to think that the reason that it's not as bad as it could be is because God is not already at work restraining a bunch of unnecessary evil among us. Why aren't water reserves poisoned every day? Or why do 99.999% of all planes take off and land safely? God is at work. The world could be much worse than it could be. There could be a lot worse diseases and a lot worse calamities and all sorts of things affecting us. All you have to do is watch futuristic movies or read sci-fi about how bad it could be. And it could be a lot worse than it is. And there's no reason to think that the reason that it's not is God himself. Now, having said that, and I fully do believe that God is at work and restraining a lot of evil that could happen, and he's stopping it, to have a workable theodicy, to have a workable explanation for the problem of evil, it should be able to explain as many problems of evil as possible. Remember, just earlier in the video, we said there are multiple problems of evil, and a good theodicy should be able to explain them. In general, theodicies fall under two main headings: free will defenses and greater good theodicies. The free will defense, all in all of its flavors, says that evil occurs ultimately because of the misuse of human free will. In that Adam sinned, he brought evil into this world by his misuse of free will. And because of that sin, God cursed the earth, which allows for a world full of natural evil. Because it is man's choice and not God's, the philosophical problem of evil goes away, because God is still good, God is still all-powerful, but because he has given human beings a measure of free will and human beings have misused it, therefore evil has been brought into the world. It does not have its origin in God, it has its origin in us. Societal evil then is a systemization of moral evil, and moral evil is the result of all human bad choices. Now, God could remove evil from this world, say the free will defense folks, but by doing so, he would violate the freedom he gave humans. And that freedom is grounded in the desire to be loved even as he loves. And thereby, it would be a worse world than a world in which the possibility of evil existed. Because evil is possible because humans are created. Evil is a potential reality because of the creation of humans. You see, God is who he is and loves because that is who he is. He cannot be or do otherwise. Human beings, because we are created, are not automatically who we are to be, and therefore we have the for us to love entails the possibility that we don't love. God always loves. He cannot be other than who he is. Human beings, because we're created, can be other than what we were created for. And that potential to be other, the misuse of that free will, is where evil comes from, according to the free will defense. And I think it's a pretty stable defense. I think that fits not only the biblical data, but it also preserves who God is. Now, on the other side lies the greater good theodicy family. There are multiple greater good theodicies, and so that's a family of theodicies. And this family of theodicies, this greater good idea, states that God allows evil in order to bring about a greater good. In other words, he uses evil, and it's all encompassed as part of his plan, in order to bring about a good that is greater than would have existed without the evil. That is, the good resulting from the evil is greater than if the evil had not existed. Now, within the greater good theodicy, all problems of evil can be explained. It explained how God is still great and good, and yet evil exists because he's working to bring about a greater good. It explains that he is using things like moral, natural, and societal evil to bring about greater good in not only his creation but his people in specifically. But there are two problems. If God is all powerful, now not really powerful, we don't believe that God is just really powerful. We believe he is all powerful. We believe he can do anything that is consistent with his nature. If God is all powerful, could he not work his greater good without evil? To me, that's the great deal breaker of the greater good theodicy, and why I fall in the free will family. Because if God has infinite powerful resources at his disposal, could he not do something? Could he not bring about his greater good, or the greatest good, or whatever, however you want to philosophically state it? Could he do it without evil? And I would think yes. And then it also leaves the question about, what about non-redemptive evil? What about gratuitous evil? Now, I have a better word for those. What about senseless evil? And why some evil doesn't seem to have a purpose. It's just senseless. It's just random. It's just horrible. And you know, I can understand if something bad occurs in order to bring up something better or to teach a lesson or something. That to me is within the realm of possibility. But if evil is just there and it has no redemptive value whatsoever, how does the greater good theodicy explain that? You know, like the serial rapist killer who repeatedly rapes his victim before he kills her. Okay, why didn't he just kill her? Why the multiple rapes when it has no redemptive value? She's going to die anyway. You know, what about the kidnapper who kidnaps a child, repeatedly rapes and molests her, and then kills her and buries her in the woods? You know, that's senseless. It's evil on top of evil. And the problem with a greater good theodicy is it lays all of the evil that happens in the world at the feet of God. You know, that God somehow has a hand in causing, or at least in willing, or at least in pre-programming, however you want to put it, that God has somehow a hand in this non-redemptive evil. I mean, if the guy is going to kill the child, why not just kill her rather than make her suffer and then kill her? Because if she suffers and then dies, the suffering, that part of the evil, the horrible suffering of being raped or tortured or whatever, that evil has no redemptive value whatsoever. It's not done to teach her anything. It's not done to ease someone else's pain or to bring about any sort of greater good. She's just going to die anyway. And that gratuitous evil, that senseless, non-redemptive, no chance of being redemptive evil, it is the other deal breaker to me with the greater good theodicy. And again, if you believe the greater good theodicy, then the burden becomes upon you to say how whatever evil occurs is being worked to bring about a greater good. That's the worst advice you could give to someone who has just suffered a tragedy. To go up and put their arm around them and say that, well, you know, God has a plan and he's working this for his good. So if you said that to me, I'm liable to hit you in the mouth at that moment. That's a horrible thing to say pastorally. You don't know that. You don't know what is good. You don't know what God's plan is. And you don't know that tragedy is always redemptive. Now, we know that God works all things for good to them who love him and who are the called according to his purpose. That doesn't mean the things themselves are good. That means that God is able to go into a tragic situation and work his good out of that tragic situation. In other words, God is able to take the lemons and make lemonade. But it doesn't say that God created the lemons, dumped them on our heads, and then jumps in and makes lemonade. It says that God is able to enter into the situation and work his good, not that he causes all things to be as they are. If you believe that, then you got some splaining to do when it comes to why evil exists. Why is a theodicy important? It has great apologetic value, both inside and outside the church. It has great pastoral value, since we all suffer from evil in some way. And we need to be able to give a good answer. But again, we all must be able to be silent when necessary. Sometimes the best thing we can do for those who are hurting is cry with them. Be there for them. They don't need our answers. They don't need our theology unless they ask for it. And we also must be able to discern when the ask is genuine. Because some folks will ask, why is this happening to me? They're not asking why. They're lamenting. And we don't need to answer laments. We need to answer laments. We don't need to answer laments with answers. We need to answer laments with love. Only when someone really asks the question why, and we are able to discern that they really want to know why, can we begin talking about theodicy. Otherwise, we need to show them the love of God, that they still believe, but right at the moment they're questioning. I hope this has been helpful. It's just a one video series on this one. We could go a lot deeper with it, but right now we don't need to. But we do need to address and deal with the problem of evil, more specifically the problems of evil, and give a reasonable answer as to why the various types of evil exist. And that answer is called a theodicy. And again, I believe that the free will defense gives us a much better theodicy than does the greater good idea. So that's it for this time. Thank you, and we will be talking to you later. Bye.